Mechanical engineer William Osmond was trying to figure out how to make use of a common waste product, sawdust. A walk in the park left him thinking, people eat plants all the time, so why not eat trees? Osmond decided to use sawdust as a cheap alternative for a food ingredient. Considering the American food most resembling an actual piece of wood is the Rice Krispie treat, Osmond decided to test just how much of the crisp rice he could replace with sawdust without consumers noticing. Incredibly, he found you could replace 15% of the rice with sawdust without too noticeable of a difference in the final treat.
No idea. No way.
It's indistinguishable.
I have literally no idea they thought us in here. That's amazing.
Osmond's switcheroo was very clever, but pales in comparison to the gigantic switcheroo pulled on our global food supply over the past 100 years that would lead to today's people switching out a very common type of food that we had eaten for thousands of years in favor of something edible but foreign to the human diet, and as I'll argue here, maybe even toxic: vegetable oil.
Mazola corn oil.
Crisco oil.
Vegetable, corn, and sunflower oil.
Low-cost vegetable oil is in everything from packaged foods to restaurants and kitchens across the world.
Vegetable oil. Canola oil. Vegetable oil. Canola oil.
As consumption of vegetable oils exploded, rates of obesity and diabetes happened to explode with it. To understand why some doctors and scientists are saying vegetable oils make us fat and diseased, we need to take a look at some history, why some animals live longer than others, some tapes hidden in a basement, how vegetable oils are actually made, and what happens in your body when you eat them.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. And so I'm going to touch on that video in just a moment. But what we're going to do is I'm just going to welcome everyone today. Welcome to MaatSpeaks. I'm glad to be here with you again for a wonderful conversation. All right, so I'm just going to shout out the people who are already here in the chat. Greetings, Jabril. It's good to see you. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's good to be back. Oh, greetings. It's so good to see you in the chat. It's been a while. It has been a while. So peace to you. All right, y'all. So we are going to get it started. But first, as always, just let's take care of a little housekeeping before we jump into the conversation. And so if you are new to MaatSpeaks, or you have been hanging with me for a while, I just want to remind you what MaatSpeaks is all about. It's a platform. It's about us building with one another, navigating our community relationships with one another. And we're doing that by upholding, demonstrating, maintaining, however, building, getting to know, however you see fit with the principles of Maat. And so, like I said last week, if you need a refresher on those principles, you can check out those videos on my YouTube channel. So as we start this conversation, I like to always ask that you prepare to open your minds. And, this conversation came about with my dear sister, like us talking about different things in the community, as far as the healing community, the wellness community, the conscious community, the spiritual community, right? And so we decided to have this conversation because, a lot of times we just leave things as they are. We don't talk about the elephants in the room. And there's many elephants in the room that we need to discuss. And a lot of times we shy away from these conversations because we don't want to step on anybody's toes and all that. And I don't know, maybe it's the Leo energy that's happening right now. I don't know, but I think it's time that we have these conversations. Don't shy away from these and really talk about the things that are affecting our community, even the things that are inside of it, right? So we belong to a certain community, whether that's the spiritual or the Black conscious community or the holistic health or the wellness community, whatever you kind of ascribe to. It is time we have these tough conversations. And, if you are not wanting to have those conversations, it's about healing. It's about healing our community. So, like I said, open your minds, prepare yourself for the conversation just by, seeking to understand others' perspectives. That is what we aim to do here at MaatSpeaks. Okay, so a little bit more of housekeeping is that that you can support the channel in many ways. So you can become a member of the channel. So I don't know if I really want to go into detail about that right now. I'll just tell you how you can become a member really quickly. You can go on there. There's 3 levels of membership. You have the silent revolutionary all the way to the 3rd level of revolutionary, right? And that's where we're going to have the tough conversations, the deep conversations. And once we have members of the channel, then we'll discuss what those memberships will look like. Okay. So if you want to become a member of MaatSpeaks, I would love to have you as a member. I would love to start building behind closed doors. Okay. Not for everyone to see, but behind closed doors so that we can really build, because I have some things I just want to share with y'all that doesn't always need to be out here in YouTube space. Okay. Now, the other ways that you can support the channel as well. You can support the channel. I'm going to pull it up here. I do believe the super chats are active, but honestly, I actually prefer if you use these because, YouTube be trying to take from you. So I do have Cash App. You can do MaatSpeaks. You have Venmo, MaatSpeaks. And then my PayPal is GenerationalHealthRevolution if you want to support the channel in those ways. Support also looks like giving this conversation a like. It looks like sharing the content, sharing whether it resonated with you, sharing it, subscribing to the channel. That is also what support looks like. All right. So without further ado, let's jump into this conversation. So, as you know, you saw the thumbnail. My dear, dear sister has joined me today. And if you've been a part of MaatSpeaks for a while, this is my sister, okay? So, one of top 5 people, love to talk to her. So, we are going to dive into this conversation. So, I'm going to invite my sister. I don't want to have her behind stage for too long. Let's invite my dear sister Hanifa to the platform. Pieces. So how are you? Because we both been like MIA. So tell the people, tell your fans, how you been doing?
My fans. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Hi. It's been a while. I'm okay. I'm actually well. I'm much better than I was probably a year ago. So I'm super excited to have the conversation today because you and I we always talk. So
Yes.
I'm excited to have the conversation today and see where it takes us because I feel like we go from one thing to the next. So I'm interested to see how this goes. Good to be
Yeah.
here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Oh,
you.
I just saw my thing skipped. Okay.
Yes. So we can just
Okay.
do.
That's it.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you
Yeah.
hear me? Okay. So we can just do what we do, like we can just flow like we always do. Now, I'm gonna try to keep this conversation to like hour and a half because we can go on for hours. So,
Yeah.
we're gonna jump into the conversation. So, I want everyone to just take a look here. And I just want you to really understand what this conversation is about. So I have the thumbnail here because I want you to understand that what we're going to be talking about. We're talking about holistic health, the toxic truth the toxic truth about holistic health and Black consciousness, right? And we're going to be talking about people who are, and I got this from my sister Hanifa here, parasites of profit, right? Are we it's so many things that you can put there, right? Are you a healer or are you a parasite of profit? Are you for the community or are you a parasite of profit? Are you really trying to teach people something or are you a parasite of profit, right? So we're gonna jump in. So y'all know, well, I don't know if you know, you might not know, but my sister here knows. I have been on this thing with cults, right? So we talk about cult mentality, and we talked about that during the last conversation that I had on here. And one of the things that just I'm going to be talking about it for a while. Anytime I have different conversations with people, I do bring up the conversation of cult mentality because I truly believe that we suffer from cult mentality because we're still religious. And so, we have a hard time disconnecting from making whatever we're a part of a religion, right? So you have people who are in the, we talked about it, like you have the Sabians, right? And that's a cult. Like you have the people who are vegans or who ascribe to veganism, which can be a cult. And then you have the spiritual cults, right? And so we changed the name, but we haven't actually changed how we operate within those different systems. And so we're going to be talking about, today, how much that aids. So that when you create this cult or you create cults within the community, right, that aids how people can operate within that system. So the video, I want to like really hit on the video real quick that I had put up before we started the conversation. Excuse me. And the reason I put that video up is because a lot of us are operating in the community, in the whether it's the wellness part, the spiritual side, or the Black consciousness side. We operate like that, right? We're like, how far can we go to make money? Like, how far can we go to, what can we do? How can we kind of like push the envelope where I'm not putting a lot of resources into this, but then I can gain so much back from, the lack of knowledge of people, right? So if you have a lack of knowledge of something and you don't really know how to, and the people that you are serving don't really know, like I'm able to take advantage, right? I'm able to exploit you, right? So I was thinking about all the different types of businesses that we have. And let's start with the wellness. Let's start with the holistic health and wellness people, which that when it comes to Black consciousness and spirituality, it kind of crosses, it's intertwined. But I want to start with that because right now we're having wellness conversations. This is Wellness Month. Well, we're ending Wellness Month. And I want to start there, right? So I want to start with asking you first. Hanifa, when you see the wellness community and, the health community, what sticks out to you as something that is being pushed out to the community as wellness, right? But it's really like it's really toxic, right? Like we're pushing it out into our communities, but it's like it's really deep down, it's like a toxic approach. Oh, all right. Can you?
Okay, so let me start here. Am I good?
there is a delay. So there's like a long delay.
Okay, you want me to come back in?
Yeah, let's do that because it's really long.
You want me to come out and come back in? Okay. All right.
All right, y'all. So she's gonna come back in. And so if I just want to make sure that you can hear me fine. So if you can hear me well, just let me know. Just tell me in the chat, like you can put like a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. Okay. Just let me know. Let me know. All right. Can y'all hear me? I'm just trying to make sure that it's not me. Okay, cool. Okay, good. I was just making sure that y'all could hear me. All right, so I'm waiting for her to come back in. As I am waiting for Hanifa to come back in, I'm just gonna kind of continue to talk. So one of the things that we, in the wellness community that we tend to overlook, and something that is definitely an issue that I see, is the approach that we have as far as our, people lacking knowledge in the, well, let's start here with the healing, right? So a lot of people are in need. They want to heal. And so it's very easy to use exploitative practices for people who don't understand or lack knowledge within the healing community. And so one of the things that I see, right, we've talked, like if you've been a part of conversations before, we've talked about value a lot in our conversations. And so you see it now, and to me, it's gotten worse. You see that the more famous a person is, right, the more valuable they are. And so the more valuable they are, the more people will pay to gain access to that person. And so there's a lot of times where just because that person has a certain level of prestige, or they're at a certain level, a lot of people will say, I'm going to listen to that person, or I'm going to pay for their services, when, because they have such, they have like that whole idea of value in the community, right? And so we want to look at, okay, my Hanifa's coming back in. All right, y'all. Okay, peace.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Is that
can hear.
better?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. So what was the question you asked me?
Oh, okay. Let me go back into my thoughts.
Okay.
I was asking you that as far as like in the wellness community,
Mhm.
and a lot of things that are being pushed out, right? And I'll kind of go into what I was just talking about, because a lot of us, I think, especially in our community, there's a lot of people who are seeking to heal, right? So
Mhm.
healing is a big thing and it's needed in our community. We know that healing is needed, but a lot of times people lack knowledge in that area of healing. So I believe people can get exploited very quickly, because of the lack of knowledge. And we can take that across the board. So let's kind of start there with a lot of things that happen in the wellness community that is deemed as, as helping the community, but it's really taking from the community. It's like really toxic practices.
Wait 1 second. Let me mute this.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, I'm trying to see where I can start. Okay. So let me just start by saying this, right? So the age that we are in right now, like people are really in a mindset to seek more knowledge of self. And when I say knowledge of self, I mean like people are really finding ways to heal themselves, right? So anyone that's paying attention know that there's this urgency, I would say, within or amongst people to kind of become like, how can I say it? I'm trying to be careful how I say this part. um, but people are there's an urgency for people to kind of be self-sufficient. That's the word I'm looking for,
Okay.
right? And that's through healing, feeding themselves, taking care of their own self. People are walking away, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
from religion, like in all forms, like crazy. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the church is seeing, sorry, my camera. The church is seeing like this major like decline
Right.
of like membership. I think it's happening across religions as well,
Mm-hmm.
because I know that there are people who are Muslims doing the same thing. So I say all of that to say that I just wanted to start there, that um the climate, I would say, of today is there's a sense of urgency for people to try to figure this out, because the things that they have tried in the past have not worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
The government is not helping, right? You see the back and forth about the presidency, the elections, the state officials,
Mm-hmm.
police, whoever. People
Right.
have tried different things and it just hasn't worked.
Mm-hmm.
And people are now returning, I would say, to themselves. That being said, I think what is happening is, I like to say, my aunt, I say all the time, nothing is sacred under capitalism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I stand on that, right? And you see it over and over and over again.
Right.
So some of the practices that I think that I'm seeing, and someone spoke on this earlier today. I meant to send you the article, but they were having a conversation around this sense of retreat stuff
Mm.
that you're seeing happening a lot.
Right.
And because nothing is sacred under capitalism and everything becomes more about profit and less about people,
Mm-hmm.
right? What's happening is it's taking on a very elitist kind of tone in a lot
Mm.
of these services, so-called services that people are trying to provide to other people for their health, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, I mean, if you look at anyone over maybe history or whatever, I'm talking about people who were like real like gurus, the Buddhas, the whatever,
Mm-hmm.
there was no charge at the door, right? Because of what these people provided for the collective, for the community, people
Mm.
automatically wanted to make sure that what they were taken care of.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily them saying, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to charge for laying my hands on you,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to charge for this. And there's nothing wrong with charging for services, but
Mm-hmm.
under capitalism, seeking profit looks completely different,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
now you end up in this overcharging thing. So, like for the retreats, for example, these things are running thousands and thousands of dollars in
Mm-hmm.
places that the American dollar stretches really long, right? So let's say a villa that they're having the retreat at for a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Having that villa for that weekend is probably, I'm just saying, I'm going to say, like they say, if you go to Tanzania for a month, you can have an apartment there for like between 250 and $300 for 1 month. So
Right.
when you talk about these other countries like South America and so forth, right, these different places, you can get a nice villa, Bali, right,
Mm-hmm.
for probably around the same amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now you have to feed the people. Let's just say everything there is probably cheaper than it would ever be in America. So I want us to just bear that in mind, okay? And then now the people who you're saying come, and probably the people who need the most healing, that
Mm-hmm.
stuff is out of their reach.
Right.
You
Right.
talking about $2,000, over $2,000. People are literally out here trying to figure out how to pay their rent and at the
Mm,
same time feed their babies,
right.
right? And they want healing too. They want access to these tools and this information. And it's not just retreats, even the ones that are providing classes or courses online.
Uh-oh, I'm so sorry.
Did you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, like even that, and I'm gonna land here, even that, the ones who are providing courses online, that
Mm-hmm.
stuff is only accessible to certain people,
Right.
people who are in a certain economic demographic, right? People
Mm-hmm.
who are in a certain like class per
Mm-hmm.
se. You get what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say? And this is a cross race because it's not just our people doing it. You've seen the other people's prices.
Mm-hmm.
You will fall out too, you know. So I would say that's one of the things that I kind of cringe at a little bit. And even with like for me, when I see it, I'm constantly in the mindset of like, whatever I need to do for my people, show me, give me the wisdom to where I can do it without fear of not being provided for, because I think that's the energy a lot of people are operating in. And I know we're gonna talk, but I'm gonna even get into purpose and all of that, and what happens with people who say I was called to do this, right? But not really understanding how to do that, or even having the creative mind to think outside the capitalistic box of
Mm-hmm.
how to function in that gift, right? Without having the need to exploit
Mm-hmm.
or to how can I say it, Maya? To come off as almost parasitic, or to exclude or marginalize a certain demographic of people simply because they cannot afford your services. So
Mm.
yeah, I know I said a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you know, I think we tend to have you know, when it comes to the wellness or the spiritual or even, you know, African, because I mean we can go across the board as far as what we see in our community where it's you have something that people need but they can't afford, right? You can look at the education, right? And we tend to outprice the people who actually need it the
The
most.
most.
And so, you know, like even when we look at the so it's so many, right? So each one can have its own conversation. So I'm gonna touch on the things that are, you know, in our community and what happens when we have when people can exploit you because you have a lack of knowledge of something. And that's why it's so important. And you know, like even when you just said what you know what you just said when you first started and you were talking about us being in this place, right? We are in the place that we're supposed to be as far as healing goes. We are in a place where we are supposed to be departing from those traditions that we were used to that no longer serve us. So we are supposed to be in this space. But what happens is, especially, and you know, there's a thing, and I've talked about it before, as far as like something over correcting. But we're in a space where we still have a huge lack mindset. And so, in order for, you know, I've talked to you about this before, because I remember there's a lot of shaming. There's a lot of shaming that goes on in the community where a person is they're a business owner, and they're a spiritual business owner. Let's use spiritual business owners, because a lot of spiritual business owners, they're telling you you should not be working. You should, you know, like you're not manifesting good enough. You're not what all of the things that they tell you to do, right? And this goes back to religion, because what do a lot of the um what is it? What are they called? The prosperity gospel preachers, right? Tell you to do. You have to give. You have to give. The more you give, the more you receive. And so what happens is we think that there is value tied to the amount as a consumer. So as a consumer, you think that there is more value tied to how much you are giving to that person, but they have to be valuable, right? So they have to look the part. So if I'm not paying, I don't know, let's say $2,000, $5,000 to come to your retreat, is it worth me coming to your retreat? I told you about we had that conversation with my loctician, right? Who my loctician is very reasonably priced now, and that is not easy in Atlanta because everybody overprices everything here. And so in the conversation I had, and a lady asking her, why are your prices so low, right? So some people will get shamed into raising their prices because they're like, oh, well, my prices should be higher. That even happened with me when someone was telling me I needed to raise my prices on my, my voice lessons and things like that. And my thing has always been tied to everybody having as much access as possible. But what happens is I'm going to ask you this question, because the purpose, when someone says they're being called to something, because I do think there are a lot of people who have good intentions, but then what happens? It gets bigger, right? And the bigger that it gets, the more money you see and the more that you can make. And then there are other people who start attaching themselves to you and saying, hey, do you know how much money you can make with this particular thing? So I think there's two sides, right? I think there are people who come into the wellness / conscious / spiritual community and they have good intentions. And I think there are people who come into this community to exploit. Like we see that in every area. So let's first focus on the people who have good intentions. So you have good
So,
intentions.
oh,
Uh-huh.
sorry. So I was just gonna say that as well. Okay, go ahead. You might be going into it. The good intentioned people. Go ahead. I'm listening.
Yeah, so I want to first focus on the good intention people, because I think a lot of us in the space, we come into it, we're like, okay, we want to help as many people as we can help. But something happens, right? As you start growing, as you get bigger. And let's kind of like discuss that. Let's discuss like what happens to a person who is good intention, but then something changes. And so when they were let's say they were charging $100 for their services, now they're charging $1,000 for their services.
Mhm.
What happens there to make a person decide that I'm going to just fully go it? Okay, so do you think they think that they're being exploitative when they make such a leap like that?
So that's what I was gonna say. Like I'm glad you called it like good intention people, because I was just gonna say I think that a lot more people fall in the category of I really wanna help and I will help, but I don't know how to do this without making sure that I can gain a certain amount to sustain myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that a part of this that I don't want to leave out is this is almost impossible under this kind of like current economic structure,
Uh-huh.
also because we are literally existing within a very individualistic society,
Right.
right? What we are discussing, or I would say the ideal, is birthed out of community, which
Mm-hmm.
is lacking. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? And so there are people who are going in, like you said, with good intentions. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I said. They have not really tapped into that, like to think outside of that box that is given to them that says, oh, my aunt, you have a gift. Okay. You know how many of our sisters are seers? You know how many of our sisters are energy readers? You see them all over, right? Online, all over right now. Okay. But as soon as what happens, Maat, when somebody find out you have a talent, a skill, or a gift, what is the next thing that comes out their mouth? Yo, you should do what? Right? You should find a way to profit off of this.
Right. Right.
Right? That's the next conversation. It's never really about how are you going to utilize that to serve yourself and your people. How are you utilizing that skill, that talent, that gift to serve yourself, your family, and your community? It's never that conversation. That conversation always follows the profit conversation. You see what I'm saying? So there are people who are coming in with good intentions. They know they have something that can possibly help
Right.
their people, their families, their communities. But once they get there, because we lack a sense of genuine community, they are not supported in the way that they probably should be. Do you get what I'm saying? And these people oftentimes have children, they have families, they have people in their families they're taking care of, they have homes that they have to sustain, by way of a mortgage. I mean, we can go on, but because again, all of these things have to go together. Even though we're talking about it in isolation, I want to be clear that there's a connectivity between the lack of community and people feeling the need to, like you called it, over charge, right, for whatever their services, or people thinking I need to make a profit off of something that just comes naturally to me that can actually build up myself, my family, and my community. It is because of a lack of community why that fear that you're talking about is there. Because think about it, Maat. I always think about and this is probably, people may not like this example, but this example always comes to my mind. The Will Smith's children. Okay, to give you an idea of that. So, what community would offer, the richness that community would offer, I would use them as an example to say these children, parents, right, had the means, right, to provide a life for them to where they can pursue, whether they succeed at it or failed at it, whatever they can imagine in their mind that they wanted to pursue. Okay? They could do that comfortably. Why? Because their needs are met already, right? That's a head start that they have ahead of most of us, ahead of our children and so forth. But when we have community, because we think of wealth only by way of money. Let's say we had a community, there's land, our children are sustained there, they can explore whatever talents, not just explore, but discover and cultivate those talents, right? Because their needs are met, right? All their 1920, they're living on the land, they're eating off of the land, right? They don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, I need to see how I can make money with this gift, with this talent, right? So that I can do what? Sustain ourselves. Because what is the connection? Because the connection is simply, we got bills to pay. That's literally what it boils down to. But if there's a sense of community there, that is kind of like the antidote for the fear, right? Or the operating in lack that a lot of us experience. So it all goes hand in hand. So to the well-meaning people, they exist. But when they go into it, they have the chatter in their ear, right? You know the people who start off a certain way, we've all seen them. And then like a few years later, they get some like following and whatever. And it's like, this is a whole different person now. You know what I'm saying? Because there's this idea of, like, I know an elder that was charging a certain amount for his book. And then he had a younger person telling him he needs to double the price. And the elder literally was like, I want people to be able to access the information.
Right.
But this younger person, who's from a totally different generation, right, is saying, nah, because that information is the information is free. If we really want to talk about it, it's there. You get what I'm saying? So it's me connecting to my source.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? Whether it's through me fasting, whatever ceremony, whatever, or just meditation, whatever that is, and I'm writing these things down in a book, right? That information that I've accessed, it came to me free. My connection to source is free. You get what I'm trying to say? That connection between me and my creator or my higher self, whatever y'all want to call, is free. But now I have the information, and my ad say, Hanifa, I want you to come and share this. And I say, my ad, that's gonna be $2,000 if you're gonna have me on your show.
Right.
For
Right.
For the information that was free.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think they are well-intended people, like you said, but I think like once they get into, I would assume that there's a discipline that has to be had for them to stay the course and stay focused. You get what I'm trying to say? Because it's not only that, then you start blowing up. They didn't tell you, right? The neighborhood you live in, you don't need to be in that neighborhood no more because you're bigger than that neighborhood now, right? Which now requires you to do what? To earn more, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. But and the issue that I have with it, right? Because we know what is happening is, oh, okay, some people are but because there's something that happens as like, because like I'm not anti-business, business owner,
Right.
I do have a business, but at the same time, it's just like what happens is there is something, because it's so indoctrinated into us to try to get the most out of something. So you sell, right? You sell your business or you sell your services for a price because one, you want people to come into your business, so you're selling it. Then you're like, oh, people buying it. Let me raise my price, right? Because people are now buying it. And so then you continue to do that because now you have all of these business gurus who are telling you that you need to get your, like, you need to not worry about the people who can't pay for your services. Only gravitate to the people who are going to, because they're the ones who are worth your time because they have the money. They have the money. And so those are the people that are worth your time. And like even when you were just talking about community, what irritates me is that we are selling community. Like there are people who are saying just in order for you, and I mean it goes back to the religion, right? So in order for you to be a part of my community, like, I mean, here's your price to be a part of my community, right? And so it's a lot of things that happen where I struggle with, why are we, we say it's and I do, I agree, it's definitely a lack of community. We are very individualistic, right? But we never, it's like a point of us not really taking that step back and looking and saying, how did I feel when I lacked community, right? How did I feel when I didn't have the support? Because now you're being supported now maybe by others, or you are being supported by others' monies and others' hard labor, right? Because now we have to talk about that elephant in the room, which is how much of us, it's not that we understand capitalism exists, and that is the system that we exist in. It's now us saying, I don't just want to exist in this system of capitalism. I don't just want to, have to maneuver through capitalism. I want to take full advantage of capitalism because somebody's going to take advantage of it. So it might as well be me, right? So it to me, it's a very thin line of what you see in our community, because you see even people that, I see people even that we respect, but they're charging thousands of dollars for their services. Like, I don't understand. So for consultations, right? So I'm a holistic health care. My consultations are free. But when I see a person say they're charging $1,000 for a consultation, And then a person says, well, what are you paying? What are you paying for that consultation? You're paying for the time that it took for me to get whether it's a degree, whether, you know, people are really saying now that you're paying for my degree. Now, I saw that the other day. Somebody said you're paying, there are people that, you know, you have to charge that much because you're paying for the time that it took for me to get my degree. Or it took the time that it took for me to do my research. All of those different things. But at the same, but we have to understand. And then somebody even said, well, you know, people have student loans and all of that. And so now it gets to a level of, I'm not just paying for you for the service. I'm paying for you to pay off all your bills. I'm paying for you to you know, I'm paying all of for you to not just live, right? I'm paying for you to have the experience of your life, right? By exploiting others. It's so hold on. So right. And so again, when I look at, you know, and sticking to like right now to the wellness community, because we can talk about all these other people who are traveling the world and asking, you know, for $500 just to talk for 30 minutes. So we can look at all of those different aspects. But when it comes to the wellness community, and you touched on it, there's a high level of elitism within the wellness community / the conscious community, right? And so when people say, I am doing this for my community, but we're really kind of taking, you're taking from your community, because again, I go back to that lack of knowledge, right? So let's talk about these, like a lot of these Black owned vegan restaurants, right? And so where do they mostly exist? A lot of Black owned
low income neighborhoods.
Yes. They exist in low income neighborhoods, right? So you go in there, right? Because somebody has told you, you know, because, you know, the vegan community is a code in itself, right? So they'll be on the street corner and they'll tell you that eating meat is wrong. It's bad. It's toxic. You shouldn't be eating it. And so you like, they give you the research, they tell you all these things, and then you're like, okay, all right, I'm ready to start my vegan lifestyle because I don't want to eat toxic foods anymore. And so then they start looking for ways to eat better, right? And so you get introduced to plant-based eating, whether that's a burger, whether that's a wrap, whether that's a salad, you know, all of these things. And so you see in your community this restaurant, you walk in and it costs $30 to buy a salad, or it costs $20 to buy a plant-based hamburger. Now we're gonna touch on them hamburgers later.
Yeah, I was gonna say $15 for a burger. Literally $15 for a burger.
Right.
But the neighborhood that you're in, the people in the neighborhood can't afford that. You see what I'm saying? So yes, like $15 literally for a veggie burger. Yeah. And here's what the issue is with me around the veganism piece. Veganism is literally just a bridge to where people really should be going, right? It's not intended for you to reside there. And when I say that, I mean that people should be, like my husband to say, focus more on an ITIL kind of way of living. And ITIL just means you're kind of more focused on just the fruits and the veggies and, you know what I'm saying? Like those type of things, right? Veganism for me is kind of like a in between, right? The meat eating and ITIL. It's kind of what people like. It's so that people don't go completely cold turkey.
Yeah.
But the challenge with that is, if that is what it is, and that's what I see it as, when it can be discouraging for people who might be on their way to possibly ITIL living, that just because they pass through veganism, right? Because you got, and when I said, I mean, you got vegan ribs. Like veganism have alternative to almost every meat thing. And if they don't have it, they're gonna find a way to, like, they have carrot hot dogs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Carrot hot dogs, my aunt? Who is eating a hot dog? Right?
Mm-hmm.
But what is that for? That is almost to, like, it's a marketing thing. It's for to draw the people into a healthier way of eating. Because truth be
Mm-hmm.
told, what you call it, a carrot is always going to be healthier than a hot dog. I mean, we're not going to argue that, right? So that's their way of drawing people in. But what I'm afraid of is that when the people are drawn in, the discouragement comes, because it's like, this is too damn expensive. And so they never reach where they're supposed to be headed to. You know what I'm saying? Because they can't even, like, cross the bridge, because the bridge is just, it's above them. You know what I mean? And that's a lot of people where they say, it just became too, people are probably gonna, in order for people to actually eat cheaper and healthier and be vegan, they're probably gonna have to just start cooking for themselves
Oh
and
yeah.
just staying away from the processed vegan food. Like my husband just says, processing plant-based. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I wanted to inject that, like, the discouragement, right, that people experience on their way to cleaner eating because of veganism and the overpricing of the stuff, my aunt. And yet you're in these low income. Did you forget where you at? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, because there's a lack of teaching that is happening now, right? So there was a level of teaching that was happening when people were transitioning, or there was things that were happening with a lot of our elders, because they didn't have these transitional
Right.
foods. And on my last live, I talked about this, because I'm starting to, like, not really feel like transitional foods just keep you eating the junk. Like, just
Yeah,
keep
I
eating
agree.
toxicity. So you have to learn how to properly eat for your body, because do you think that person who is selling you that, because $15 for a burger here in Atlanta, really, for a vegan burger, really don't exist here, unless it has nothing on it. So $20 for a vegan, or a vegan burger, right? And do you think that person wants you to stop coming and getting they $20 vegan burger? They want you to continue to come get their $20 vegan burger. So they're not going to actually educate you. And honestly, I think half these people who have restaurants are not educated on the proper way to eat anyway. Because if you think that eating an Impossible Burger is better than eating whole nutrition and whole foods. And that's why I keep going to the lack of knowledge. I can exploit you because you don't know any better. And I'm not going to teach you any better. That's why we have this whole thing with people who look the part. So they look the part, like you got your fitness influencers, you got your spiritual influencers, you got all these different people who are influencers, and they look the part. So since they look the part, they end up getting all of these people who listen to them, but they haven't even done the work themselves. They haven't done the study themselves. But because we live in this social media age, anybody can get online and say whatever they want to say to you, and you can believe it, right? Like, you'll just eat it right up, right? And so I want to go into this because we talked about this before with black owned restaurants, right? And so, or black owned businesses. So I support black owned businesses. So before I say this, don't even be saying I don't support black owned businesses, because I do. But let's be honest when it comes to black owned businesses, because we get shamed. The people who are, like, at the lowest part of the totem pole, you get shamed the most because you said that the money is leaving the community. The money is leaving the community.
Mhm.
But we go, because I have people all the time, they're like, okay, if I say I name a restaurant, they'll ask, well, is that a Black-owned business? And one of the things that we have to understand when it comes to Black-owned businesses is the community aspect of holding that Black-owned business accountable. I'm not going to say I went, but I went to this place with a lot of businesses, okay? I'm going to say, because if the person happened to see it, they're going to know I'm talking about them. And so, he black owned, I bought some black soap from him. And as we are buying it, he gets into conversation and he says, oh yeah, I took my wife here and we went, she likes to shop at Balenciaga and all that. And I'm like, hold up. So we put our money into these Black-owned businesses, but they ain't not putting their money into Black. They're the ones their money is leaving the community. But we the people who are the low bottom portion of the totem pole, we're getting talked about and being shamed for our money leaving the community. But you tell us, go put your money, but they don't want to send it. Where are they sending their kids to school? These people who are making thousands of dollars off of Black bodies, because we know that most Black-owned businesses know that in order for them to start, they have to use us as, until they get to where they want to be, because a lot of Black-owned businesses are like, eventually I want those white folks over there, right? Because that's where the money is at.
Because that's the majority.
Mhm.
Because black people are still a minority in this country.
Right.
And so, you're in their minds is, I want all of it. I want access to all of it, right? To all the fiat. And
Yeah.
so, that's why some people don't like to put like black, like some people don't like to make it known that they only cater to black people, right? Like
Right.
they're not doing it because it's going to affect their money. You get what I'm saying? So we're still a minority in this country, and so that's like that in a lot of their minds, it's not good for business. Not
Right.
if you want to scale, not if you want to, you know what I'm saying, expand your
Mhm.
business and so forth.
Mhm.
I was you said something earlier about like people can just get online and take like a quick course, and
Right.
now all of a sudden they're experts. And I think about how long like people take to master or took to I'm talking about 40 years.
Mhm.
You're talking about initiates going through many different kinds of initiations, right? To
Mhm.
learn certain things in the mystery schools and so forth. And you have somebody, some little young person, who just got wind of some information, and all of a sudden they're master teachers, and they're charging master teacher prices, and you're looking like, what wind blew you in?
Mhm.
What wave did you ride in here on? Who are you? One of the things that I always talk about, like, and I think I've told you this, one of the things that Baba Kalindi used to say, and everybody know anything about Baba Kalindi, he was a mycologist in his own right, and many, many other things.
Mhm.
And people who would do ceremony, you know, sorry, using psilocybin. He said
Mhm.
one of the things that he would notice is that people um, had no experience with the medicine, no
Mhm.
experience, but would write whole books,
Mhm.
would literally write whole books, just extracting information from other people's stuff. You know what I'm saying? And you're not even quoting your sources or anything like that. And just writing books and making sales and creating retreats for ceremony and all of these things. And that's a whole nother conversation that, for me, I'm like, people need to be careful with that. Because
Right.
now you're talking about your like opening up yourself to certain entities and energies. You get what I'm saying? And the person who is guiding your ceremony, just had a big old blow up with their mother, you know, called her all sorts of names, or the person that is doing your ceremony is also a thief.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're
Yeah.
literally robbing people, through scams. And this
Yeah.
is who is leading your ceremony. So a lot of discernment is lacking with that. And the last thing I'm going to say too, as far as the spiritual piece, because I know you want the wellness, the spiritual piece of it is that our people, and I would say people in general, but since we are two Black women up here talking, I would
Mm-hmm.
say Black people has a serious savior complex. This is the reason why we engage in politics the way we do. It is because we are hoping that somebody can sweep in and
Mm-hmm.
resolve our issues and fix our issues that we have within the community. We have this savior complex to where we are always looking outside of ourselves for
Mm-hmm.
that. And if anybody's paying attention, that is an opportunity right there, because these people are always looking. I mean, let me tell you something. I watch people come in with all sorts of information and people don't fact check nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. Oh, such and such said this, so it must be true.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There are people that I respect. And I was talking to my husband about one of them, an elder that was talking, and I know within myself, he said some stuff, and I'm like, this brother is misogynistic
Yeah.
through and through, like in the most religious way though.
Mm-hmm.
But he considers himself to be non-religious,
They all
right?
do.
Yes, even the non-religious is still operating within the spirit of religion in
Yep.
so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think that, and this is somebody I respect, but being able to go in and listen to what they're saying, and when something doesn't sit right, being able to confront that thing and not being afraid simply because the person apparently has more knowledge than you. They have more degrees, they've been to school, and so now you're put in a position, because you're always in this savior complex kind of mindset. You're put in a position where now you are distrusting yourself,
Yeah.
simply because this person word is worth more than your inner voice to
Right.
you. You get
Right.
what I'm saying? So within the spiritual community, I see that happening oftentimes, where people just, I mean, you got people who've said women shouldn't be having their menstrual cycles, right? And no one has ever discussed it. You get what I'm saying? It's just like
They shouldn't be having a menstrual cycle. Like they just shouldn't have them.
they shouldn't have them. That it is.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if I should have said that.
I just was like, hold on, maybe there's more to the sentence.
No, I'm just. I probably shouldn't have said that, but that just came to my mind. No, I'm just saying that even stuff like that, you see how we're laughing. Even
Right.
stuff like that, people, and this is what's so problematic, because it's extreme teachings like that. Now you have women feeling a type of way within their own bodies because
Yeah.
they bleed every month. This is
Right.
like, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? So I'm just saying I've seen enough to where, and I can't even think of others. I'm sure they're gonna come, but just so many different teachings out there that is just on the extreme end. And I think people are exiting, and there's an exodus out of religion right now. So when they meet non-religious people, right, they're all ears. And so this person, because they're no longer affiliated with religion, then they know what they're talking about. And on top of that, they're an elder. And on top of that, they studied. On top of that, they're always quoting books. They've read so many books, and so, so forth. If it's anything I've learned on my own spiritual journey, right, is that we really need to get back to trusting ourselves, our inner voice, right? Like really reconnecting with that voice, knowing what it sounds like, right? Because there are many things that come in, come through our thoughts and so forth, but really like reconnecting with self, right?
Yeah.
There are questions that you can ask self, and I'm talking about self, the divine within self, right?
Mm.
And if just like you will Google something, and if you wait, the answer will come, Maat. Okay, the answer would come. But we've been trained from such a young age to look outside of ourselves for everything, not to trust ourselves, not to trust our own thoughts, right?
Mhm.
Not to trust our own intelligence, our own divine intelligence. For goodness sake, we've been told that God dwells somewhere outside of us in the sky,
Mhm.
somewhere far out of our reach, right? We've been taught that and program in that direction for so long that it's hard to shake that. You know what I'm saying? And so
Right.
what's happening is the exploitation is at a high level solely because of that. Because people are constantly looking for answers outside of themselves. My aunt song like she know what she's saying. I'm gonna latch on to my aunt. And you know what I'm saying? So, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And the last thing I wanted to say is that the profit piece of religion, of spirituality and in the wellness community, what came to my mind was the tithing, right? I was a
Mhm.
Christian, you were a Christian, right? And interestingly, this is one of the things that drove me crazy when I was in the church, because on one hand, they're saying that Christ came and fulfilled the law.
Right.
Under the law, they had the priesthood, right?
Mhm.
Those people who came from, the lineage of Aaron. These are the Levites, right? And the Levites, the tithing was for the temple, the upkeep of the temple, the Levites, and so forth. So when you say that Christ came, this is what the teaching is, right? He came and he fulfilled the law. And I'm like, but why are we still paying tithes? That was my issue. That was one of my many issues, right? When I was in Christianity.
Mhm.
Why are we still paying tithes?
Right.
And then not only that, you've now connected the payment of tithes,
Mhm.
right, to punishment,
Mhm.
right? So my aunt, this is the indoctrination. If I go there and I'm having a difficult time paying my rent, I don't think to stop tithing. You know what I think? I need to tithe more.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's high level exploitation, right? To the point where people have set up whole ATMs in their churches today,
Mhm.
right? To where people can't go to the church and ask for help if they haven't been paying any tithes. So
Mhm.
it's almost like the church has become almost like a bank,
Yeah.
for the community in a sense. You know what I'm saying? So I was thinking about tithing when you had mentioned to me the topic, and I was just like, that tithing thing used to drive me crazy, man. That was like the last sacred cow
Mhm.
for me that had to go.
Yeah.
But you see it in the church to where it's like they're not willing to relinquish it. I think it's who's the guy, the brother down there? I think he's down there in Atlanta. Come on, the chocolate one, darker complected. He recently came out and said the tithing thing is wrong.
Mm. I don't
Oh
know.
God. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know who you're talking about.
Don't,
You said
you know it. Creflo. Creflo.
okay. Okay.
Creflo a few years back
Mhm.
actually came out and said that
Mhm.
tithing is wrong.
Mhm.
You know, your girl went to look up how much his church was getting per month. And he's been teaching tithing for over 20 years,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I'm looking like, so now how do you reconcile that now?
Yeah.
Right? Because now you've come to that conclusion. How do you fix with the harm that you've done?
Mhm.
Do you see what I'm saying? Billions. Do you understand me?
I mean, that's
Billions.
just like when people come out and say, "Yeah, I did this injustice to you, or I killed someone." Like the person is dead. Like, what do you like? How you are going to um uh like fix this, right? Because the person is already dead and gone. You know,
Yeah.
so it's the same thing, and that's what I see even with like staying on the spiritual piece is that's what because we're still religious. So, and here's the thing, because the majority, And so you have to do a self-check. So that thing of going inward is not an easy thing. So I think that we do have to understand that it's not easy, because when you take that inward, oh, I was like, did my lights go out? But that was my I don't know, because anything can happen here in Atlanta, y'all. Hold on, let me put my light back on. Okay, there we go. Okay. So when we take that inward taking that inward look takes a lot of time, and it takes you having to disconnect from those conditionings, because the longer that you believe in searching outside of yourself for the answers, and we can get it. Let me complete my thought. As long as we continue to search outside ourselves for those answers, it's very difficult for us to even stop and go inward and dismiss those conditionings, because that's a big part of it. And so a lot of the spiritual pieces, you're going to be continued to be sold heaven, right? You're going, because that's what they're selling to you. You believe that the more that you go to church, the more that you tithe, the more that you are, in that particular cult, that ultimately, because everybody gonna tell you, ultimately, where do you want? I want to be saved. I want to go to heaven. I want to be where the roads are paved with milk and honey, which was never appealing to me. But that's where people that is what you're going to continue to be sold. It just looks different. So what are people being sold? Anytime you, because look at all the people, because like, if you are a part of any, or you ever done any kind of like spiritual, pay for any kind of spiritual services, right? A lot of times what they have these tiers. And I remember even someone telling me, it's like, okay, well, hey, you're an elder. Can I seek your mentorship? And they were like, oh, just, the way to get next to me is to pay for my services, right? And so what happens is there's a lot of people who are paying for initiations, or they're paying for healings, or they're paying, and a lot of people will not teach that. They will not teach self-sufficiency. They're not teaching how you figure out how to heal yourself. How do you figure out how to connect to source yourself? They're not doing any of those things. They're just wanting you to continue to pay for their services, because at that point, they're the minister, right? They're the preacher. They're the person who is asking for your tithes, asking for your money. Because the more that you pay my services, the more I can help you gain your, with your spiritual walk. The more that I can do that, the more that you feel, right? The more that you feel like you're connected. And so they're the person that you're paying, the in between, that you go from yourself to the source, or to spirit, right? So you got people selling concoctions, right? They're the people who are selling the snake oils, and I don't have an issue with people selling things, right? Like, I don't have an issue with it. But when you are selling things, because you see it all the time, come and buy my crystal, right? Come and buy my crystal, because this is all the things that I do to the crystal. And going back to what you were talking about when it comes to valuing certain people, because we have a very hard time. This comes from religion. This comes to how we were raised, but we have a very hard time questioning anybody that we see as valuable, or we see as an elder, or we act like these people are in our minds God, right? So
Infallible. We act as if they're infallible. Yeah.
exactly. So you'll have a lot of people who do not want to talk against people that they have propped up in their mind as so valuable that you can't question what they do, right? So if you question this elder, who you're like, hey, because I've told you this before, I have never, like, listen to anyone that I 100% agree with. And you are supposed to be questioning. That's what you really are here to do. You come here to question things and create. You're here to question and create. Question and create. Like, that's really what you're supposed to do. So what happens, and I remember I was listening to a lady, and she was saying, like, when the Bible told you that the world was created, right? Like, it lied to you. The world was not created in 7 days. The world is still being created. We are still creating the world right now. Like, we're here and we are creating a reality right now. So the thing is when you are not able to go outside of yourself because you have been conditioned not to go outside, like, you have been conditioned to only go outside of yourself and not question anything that is presented to you. Like, and that, I mean, I was raised like that. Don't question your elders. Don't question me. Don't question and surely don't question God, right? So if you question the Bible, you're questioning God, right? And so that is the thing. Like, when we have a hard time not seeking value in people. And what happens is, when you only can see value in numbers, see value in people who you perceive as, have made it, or maybe they're an elder and they're a popular elder, right? Because we have elders that don't seek the spotlight. So, and there's a lot that happens when we are in this social media age where everybody is like here, wanting to be in the spotlight, wanting to be seen.
Mhm.
And so when that happens and you see it, everybody, because I mean, you could probably name about any person in the conscious community who has a big following right now. And it's not that they have a following, they have a cult following. And the issue that I have with people who have a cult following is that they never say, stop, don't follow me like a cult. Like, they continue to allow these people, because to them that is connected to money and to, like, because I can travel from city to city, and you're going to come to my conferences, and you're going to pay me hundreds of dollars to come to my conferences. So of course I'm not going to tell you to stop doing that. Of course I'm not going to tell you to stop treating me like I'm your cult leader, because I don't want you to not pay me hundreds or thousands of dollars to come to my retreat or to come to my conference.
I think one of the things that I agree with that, it's a thing of like uh it's almost like an addiction. It's you affording me a life of luxury, right? Because you see them on social media, flossing or flexing the new cars they bought, the traveling and all of this stuff. But neither here nor there, but you mentioned something that I want us to bring it full circle, right? You talk about the possible, not possible, the actual difficulty it that people may have with really going within. And because we're talking about wellness and spirituality, I wanted us to kind of hone in on that, because I know we're gonna be wrapping up soon, but hone in on that as far as let's talk about that. Let's talk about what that looks like. Let's make it practical, right? Let's talk about some practical ways in which people can go about doing that, right? And it still goes into the wellness piece of it, because I think people need to even learn to listen to their own bodies, because my aunt, you might say you were able to, there are people who literally are coming out of veganism now, and they might eat like fish here and there because they nearly died. Okay, whatever was going on with their bodies, whether they were doing it wrong, whatever that is, I've seen enough people talk about they were sick. They
Yeah.
were actually making themselves sick, right? So, but they was trying to hang on to, again, the cultish kind of mindset that sometimes come with like the vegan community, and they were ignoring, the intelligence of their own bodies. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? So it goes both ways with tuning in spiritually, and then also just tuning in and becoming one with your own body. I often say a lot of us, we are not really living in our bodies, we're living in our heads.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of how we're navigating the world. A lot of us are disconnected for our bodies for a number of reasons. Let's be clear on that. For a number of reasons. When you look at the numbers as far as Black women go, and the high percentage of our sisters who were sexually violated,
Mm-hmm.
you can understand the stress levels, right? Constantly being in flight or fight mode. What is that doing to our cortisol levels? Why are we always in stress mode,
Yeah.
right? And how that is connected to the obesity problem and other problem, fibroids and so forth, right? You can understand it. You get what I'm saying? Like, like I say, it's all connected. You get what I'm
Right.
saying? But I want us to kind of hone in on what does that look like, tuning in to
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? And for the wellness part, I'm gonna say most of us are not coming back into our bodies until we find them safe to be in. I just want to say that.
Mm.
Most of us are not coming back. We're gonna live here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not coming back until we find it. So there's a healing that has to take place, because the memory, the body is like one big brain. You know what I'm saying? It holds that memory in it. And so
Mm-hmm.
I want us to kind of like, let's unpack that a little bit, like dissect that, like dive into that a little bit. What does that look like when we say tune into self? I mean, you
Yeah,
can
and I mean that goes to like when I had a few weeks ago when I had a live and I was saying that Dr. Africa he said you don't think with your brain, you think with your body. Like you don't just think with your brain, you think with your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our bodies are not like our health, our wellness is not an isolated event,
Okay.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's connected to your spiritual body. Your body is connected to your spiritual body, right? So
Okay.
when you are feeding yourself, you're not just feeding your body for
Mm-hmm.
nutrition, you're also
Mm-hmm.
feeding your spiritual body.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I said this I think last week, until we understand the ritual behind eating, and we understand that it is a ritual, it's going to be very hard for us to connect to that ritual. And it's not because, like when people come to me and we are completing our raw reset, my group is completing the raw reset the end of this week. And one of the things that we talk about, I said, it's not necessarily about you giving up meat, but it's about you incorporating more of these foods in your body, because it is very hard. So there's a thing called intuitive eating, right? It is very hard for you to understand how to intuitively eat and what your body needs if you are not putting the right foods in your body. So if you are always eating junk, and that's what you grew up on, junk, you grew up on processed foods, and those processed foods are addictive. There are chemicals in the processed foods that make you addicted to the food. Like you are literally addicted to it. Like I was addicted to cheese. So there's a chemical in cheese that makes you addicted to it. And so you have to begin to learn how to depart from those things that are purely toxic. So I went live in my group today and I told them this. I said, there are habits that you changed these past 2 weeks that you no longer need to go back to. So you don't stop a fast or a cleanse and say, oh, well, that's over, let me go back to my toxic ways. You are supposed to now say, okay, how do I fit this into my lifestyle? Nobody's telling you to be raw. Nobody's telling you to be extreme, because I'm a habitual faster. I will fast. I'll fast in a minute. But at the same time, it's like, how can I incorporate this new lifestyle that I have just adopted for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days? How can I now adapt that to my life, right? Because the better you are feeding yourself, the better you're going to feel, the better you're going to think, the better you're going to be able to say, wait a minute, that person's not right. You know what I'm saying? Like you're going to be able to connect the dots on different people. You're going to be able to learn to trust yourself. It's very hard to trust yourself if you are not incorporating certain things into your lifestyle. So it's going to be very hard for you to go in, and we talk about it in the in the African centered community, because there are a lot of people who want to deal with the politics, but they don't want to deal with the spiritual side of things. And we cannot disconnect our spiritual from our politics, from our from the way that we are operating our community building, because we want to community build, and then we want to say, but let's leave spirituality at the door. And it's very hard for us to leave spirituality at the door, because we all have different spiritual beliefs, and and most of us believe, because we were religious, we believe that those that spirituality is so important to who we are, that we cannot just take it to say, okay, we're gonna leave our spirituality at the door. And so, to answer your question, like what it looks like, right? So first, it looks like, how can you disconnect from the things that that are 100% toxic to your lives, right? Like there's a lot of things that we engage in that we just don't question. We don't question it because everybody else is doing it. And I will say, one of the most difficult things, if we are very serious about taking ownership for our own selves, our own bodies, because I think that's very hard for us to do. It's hard for us, for example, like this, we have children. Now let's say we told our 5-year-olds, go out there and find a way to make a living for yourself, right? Like that would be, if you took your child to the door and said, go and find out a way, that would be a very scary thing for them to do, right? But we're still acting like that. We're still acting as children who are dependent on our parents, or dependent on someone else that is outside of ourselves. Because, for example, you are an extension of me, right? You're my sister. I'm gonna come to you and I'm like, I come to you about lots of things, right? And so, but I can't be dependent on you, right? Because you're gonna give me your advice. I'm gonna seek your counsel. But then it's up to me to say, these are the actions that I'm now going to take in order for me to feel better about whatever thing that I got going on. And what happens is, we don't do that. We want people to think for us. We want them to walk for us. We want them to put the food in our mouth. We don't want to take ownership, because once we take ownership for what we're doing, then that's scary to us, because we have been taught to remain children, because you're a child of God, right? You're a child of God. So you are supposed to remain a child of God. And you are not supposed to question those things, And so really, one of the things that I say, because, wellness is my thing, is you definitely, in order to be able to connect to the spiritual self, you really have to connect to what you are feeding yourself. And that doesn't just mean food. That means your entertainment. That means, like, what books are you reading? Are you going for the sexual novels, or are you going for things that are actually going to help you become that greater version of yourself, right? What are you engaging? We talk about algorithm all the time. And I was looking at a video about algorithm yesterday, and it was actually a spiritual video. And it was saying, we say that we don't like certain things, but as soon as that thing shows up in our feed, we stop at it. We look at the comments, we absorb it, even though we don't like it. And so then and when we do that, we don't listen to our bodies, and our bodies are rejecting it, because your body is telling you, I don't really like what I'm looking at. So then you snap at your children because now you're in a place of looking at something that you don't like. And so now you're snapping at your children. And now you're frustrated. And now you want something that is going to feed that frustration. And so it's a cycle that happens when all you had to do was not stop and look at that, whatever that thing was that you didn't like. And that is the algorithm of our lives as well. Like if you want to change how you feel, you have to change the things that you're doing. So like for me, the politics of right now, it bothers me. So I haven't really been like really focused on it because I just, I talked to you about it. Like it's frustrating to see how we operate when it comes to politics and how, again, you said there's a savior mentality when you were just here to save yourself, and not even save yourself. You were just here to be an infinite being that is creating. And so, first, you have to break up with whatever habits that you have that is not feeding you, feeding your body or feeding your spirit, right? Like you have to understand that, because as you eat better, right? You think better, you feel better, you move better, then you can listen to yourself better. There's a lot of people who listen to themselves, for example, like sisterhood, right? I know there are people who say, I don't like what she posted on social media, or I don't like what she said to me. So I'm going to stop talking to her. I'm going to stop being friends with her, right? Without having a conversation, without even saying, like, without picking up the phone and saying, hey, sis, like, were you talking about me? Like, and because we operate like that, because we are constantly absorbing toxic information. So you saw people telling you to like protect your peace, right? And so you thought protecting your peace means it means that you don't talk to your sister anymore because you think she was, you know what I'm saying? Like it's those types of things. You can't listen to yourself because you are not putting the right things mentally and physically in your bodies, right? Go ahead.
I have to say this because you just brought up something that drives me mad. Woo! We have to have a conversation one day. Maybe when I come back, I'll have this on my channel around how much, so much of these protect your peace,
Mhm.
cutting toxic people off every year annually.
Right.
You have your annual ritual. Like in my head, I'm just like, so you just cut off 5 toxic people, and then next year you have 5 toxic people again to cut off. Why do you keep accumulating toxic people to the
Mhm.
point where every year you have to cut off new toxic people?
Right.
It's probably because they are just a reflection of you.
Yes.
That's why you keep drawing the same people back into your space that now have to become sacrifices in your annual cutoff ritual.
Yep.
Cut
Yep.
off of toxic people ritual, because after you cut them off, it's like you said, my aunt, after we done this fast or this
Mhm.
reset, you don't
Mhm.
have to go back,
Yeah.
right? Two. But here's what I say to that. If you haven't addressed what takes you there, you
Yep.
will go back without a doubt. You will be
Yep.
right back there, right?
Right.
It is the relationship that is abusive, right? And you finally you've left that person so many times, but you still have not addressed the root of the thing that have connected you to that person. So
Mhm.
maybe, let's say you move out of state and you got away from that person. You will connect yourself to that person again with a different face. It will be the
Yep.
same energy that you're going to seek it out,
Mhm.
right? Because that is what's familiar to you. But to
Mhm.
get back to what you said that stresses me out, this thing of what you just explained, cutting people off. We have an issue with conflict resolution. We think that conflict resolution is ghosting people.
Right.
How are you friends with someone for 20 years? 20 years you've been friends with this person and they've offended you, and you can just cut them off like that after you've invested 20 years in the friendship. Y'all was just besties the other day.
Yep.
Nobody could get between y'all the other day. And now today they offended you, and you could just cut them off like that without having a conversation to sort any sort of resolution. That is connected to the individualism that a lot of us function in within this society. The
Right.
idea of, protect your peace, right? There's usually an undertone there of by any means necessary. There's an undertone of we don't resolve conflict, we just cut people off. Right? There's an undertone of lack of accountability because maybe you're the chaos. So you're trying to protect your peace from what? Right? It's this lack of accountability that you often see. And we didn't even get into this tonight, the spiritual bypassing.
Oh no, that's gonna have to be a separate conversation.
It's gonna have to be a separate conversation because the amount of spiritual bypassing that's happening in the spiritual community is alarming. People are not really healing, right? People are just like digging themselves into this like spiritual hole and hoping that they can bury themselves in the sand and completely ignore the reality of like what's going on with them. You get what I'm saying? It's a way of escaping the pain. It's no different. It's no different than the person who's on the pipe because of the pain that they're in. The person who can't get off the bottle because of the pain that they're in, because that is their means of escape. And a lot of people have used spirituality as a escape mechanism. You see what I'm trying to say? And so what happens is they spiritualize everything.
Yes.
You see them expressing something that's toxic, and you're like, yo, you might want to get some help for that. You know what I'm saying? And instead of doing that, they spiritualize it, right?
Yeah.
And when I say spiritualize it, is they start to dress it up in all of these like these like spiritual things, like oh well, this might be the God's way of like teaching me this. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, no, sweetie, you're cutting yourself. No, sweetie, you're letting that man box you upside the head. No, sweetie, you go from 0 to 100. It doesn't take much. Like you are explosive.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you're like, well, that's just, I'm an Aries. You know what I'm saying? I'm a fire sign. That's just the Aries in me. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
But as far as like people tuning into themselves, because I know you just spoke on the wellness. One of the things that I see that is keeping a lot of us from really tuning in is the pace in which we're living life. A lot of us need to slow down.
Yeah.
And I am saying this in this way. If it means that job is not allowing you to connect to your spiritual self or to heal in the way that you need to heal, either you should consider a different job. If it means going down part-time, if you can do that, I would recommend it. It might mean that, my aunt, you are living on like, right there. Like you might not be able to take any trips. Let me just say that, you know what I'm saying? For the next year. You know what I mean? You might not be able to squander your money on name brands, whatever that is, but it is worth you centering yourself. It is worth you bringing yourself back into, balance, right? It's a sacrifice that's worth it, is what I'm trying to say. Because what sense is it that you have all these things, but you're really messed up inside? You know what I'm saying? That you are off your center within yourself. Like you're making yourself sick. So for me, it's a slowing down, right? And that's where it becomes by any means necessary for me, right? Slowing down in the sense of like I am not an advocate of grind culture for this very reason. You know that. I do not subscribe to it. I do not advocate for it. I think grind culture is toxic as hell, and specifically for black people for my own reasons. We've given too much free labor. Our ancestors have provided too much free labor for us to be working 10 times harder just to be validated and accepted if we really want to talk about it. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's slowing down. Like once you slow down my art, there's so many other things that just begin to fall in place. And that's my go-to right there. If you can find a way to just slow down, right? To where you're not in a hurry, to where you take at least 30 minutes to yourself, to just quiet time with yourself, you will be surprised, right? What that can do, how that can begin to change your life, your attitude about life, right?
So I want to jump in and I don't want to prolong because I do want us to end because we were supposed to end.
Yeah, go ahead.
40 minutes ago, but I want to ask this because speaking with a lot of people who come to my classes, and I talk to them because the biggest thing that people struggle with is nutrition, right? And so one of the things that I do know is a lot of people say it's very hard for me to eat for them to eat healthy, or to because like you said before, it's about preparing your own foods, right? So it's very hard for people to prepare their foods because I'm getting off of work. And it's like, okay, even if I'm coming to the gym, like I got to choose, am I going to go to the gym or I'm going to eat, and so after I leave the gym, I'm tired. I want to go home. I want to rest. So I'm going to go and get what is the fastest, quickest, and usually the cheapest thing, right? And we know that fast food is super cheap, right? Even if you ask a person if fast food is toxic, they're going to say yes. But if you're going to ask them if they're going to stop eating it, that's a different conversation because it's cheap and I can get to it fast. And there's a lot of things.
Convenience. Yeah.
And so, but I want to say this because I do agree in the slowing down. I believe that I would not be where I am today if I did not slow down. But there's a privilege tied to that, right? So and that's why I said I don't want to like prolong the conversation.
Yeah.
I know for a fact if one of the people who come to my class and said, okay, I know you want me to slow down, but I can't. I have mouths to feed. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do we say to those people who have an inability, they don't feel like they can actually slow down? I have to. And because I was going to say to you, it comes full circle, right? Because we don't want to give away. We've gone to the other extreme because we were giving our labor away for free. Now we're saying, now I got to charge all this money for you to, like, I remember asking somebody to do my logo and they were like, about to charge me thousands of dollars to do a logo. And I'm like, and so we start taking advantage of each other in the community. One, because I feel like we think that we can do that. Also because I think that is what a lot of us don't want to happen again. It's what I call the what was the girl in the Girlfriend show? Tony. I call it the Tony mentality, right? I never want to go back to wherever she lives, whatever that place.
Fair. Yeah, fair.
Right. That fear of not going back to the place. I hear people say that even when they're like, I don't want to work all these different jobs, but I'd rather be tired and work all of these jobs rather than going back to not having enough or having nothing, right? And so how are people going to connect with themselves if they don't feel like they can actually slow down?
That's what I was gonna ask you. So again, there is always like more than one antler when it's like an octopus, now it's all these different tentacles, you know what I'm saying? But all of these tentacles are connected to who? The octopus. You get what I'm saying? And I think that what you just explained, and I'm gonna say this, okay, the privilege that you just touched on, right?
Mm,
I have a privilege of having a husband who is a provider, right?
mm, mhm.
But I wasn't always married to him, right? So there was a point that I was single and I
Right.
had my son, my oldest son,
Mhm.
right? And let me tell you what I did. I couldn't stop working. So I sacrificed wanting to move up, right? Because I know my son would not be little forever. Do you understand me?
Right.
I sacrificed wanting to people be like putting yourself in positions where you can get promotions and stuff like that. There was a position that came available that only asked for me to, first of all, took me out the office to
Mhm.
work from home. I've been working from home before I met my husband, right? So, and then I would only work, I would meet my 40 hours like in 3 days spread out. Do you get what I'm
Mm,
trying to say? And it would literally be by phone. What did that allow me to do? That's when I had started a business. It allowed me to be around my child, be there with him, to drop him to school, to pick him up, like those type of things. You get what I'm saying?
right.
That was before I got married. And it was a sacrifice I was willing to make. So,
Mhm.
one of the things that you just said is oftentimes fear creates illusions for us.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? It's all like smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
That person, I can promise you, they can slow down. It is
Mhm.
their mind and their bodies, their
Mhm.
programming
Yeah.
that's telling them that they cannot slow down. So I think people like that, this is where I say we have to start reimagining and creating and thinking and seeing ourselves outside of the boxes of programming that has been projected onto us. So
Mhm.
like how you're talking to her, this is where I think this is, I know some people don't like life coaches, but I think this is where life coaches kind of come in because it helps. Sometimes people just need help organizing their lives, Maat,
Yeah.
right? They have the time, but
Mhm.
it's somebody to come in and say, like a Maat that comes in and say, oh no, here's where you have time. What are you
Mhm.
doing with this time?
Mhm.
Watching Love and Hip Hop.
Right. That's true.
What are you doing with this time? Scrolling on Instagram for 2 hours.
Mhm.
We have it.
We have it. We do. We do. No, because that's even I had to look at my habits as well when I mean, because like we had conversations. You'd be like, you worked on your website, and I'll be like, and so it's one of those things where I said, wait a minute, I'm spending all this time doing this or watching or being on YouTube or being on social media, and then you're like, I have all this time, and so once once you start doing something, that's why I say that's the wellness piece is tied to that as well. Once you start engaging in those activities over and over again,
Yeah.
once you start eating those foods over and over again, once you start saying, I'm not going to participate in this grind culture, once you start those things, you will see how much you can detach from them and you don't even want them anymore. You don't even need them anymore. And just like Dr. Light said here,
Mhm.
the advice turns to action. That's true. Like at some point you do have to take the action. Are you ready? Right? And there's a thing, because again, I don't do the shaming thing, right? A lot of people have this idea of shaming others into doing something, right?
Mhm.
You see a lot of fitness influencers doing that. I'm gonna shame you into coming to my class, right? And
Mhm.
we do have to understand that there is a level of hand holding that has to be done if we really are about helping our community. So the people who are in positions where you are trying to help other people, you do have to learn, right? You do have to learn that, yeah, you're there, right? So, Hanifa, you are in a place where you did do those things. You made those sacrifices.
Mhm.
You slowed down, but you also know that there was a point where you had to get there, right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
had to take that journey. You had to take that walk. You had to look at what you could sacrifice, what you wanted, what you know that you didn't need. And that's the same
Mhm.
thing that I was saying when it comes to that taking that walk, right? When you take that walk with whether it's wellness, whether it's spirituality, the way to do that is by looking at those things. That's why I go back to, what habits can you walk away from and say, I'm not going back to those things because I know that they are 100% toxic.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of us, and I mean, in the conversation that we're having, right? Because when it comes down to it, the point of this conversation is really, yes, it is okay to seek advice. Because I mean, I have a business, right? Like
Yes.
I
Yes.
help
Mhm.
people with their nutrition. I
Yeah.
help people with their fitness. But if you ask the people in my group right now, I have also told them that it's about them taking ownership of their bodies, because I can give you the information. The information is there, right? I can give you the meal plan. I can give it all to you, but it's up to you to do the work. And it's up to you to take that step and take that journey. And a lot of us, because I was even asked why I priced my group so low, right? And
Mhm.
I know people will spend hundreds of dollars if they think that they can get that type of help or whatever. But if I priced it at $100, there's going to be some people who would not be able to afford that $100, or there
Mhm.
might not be some people in that group right now who need it. It could be saving someone. But because we have this elitist mindset of, well, you're putting your work into it, and that's true. It does take time to do these things.
Yeah. Of course.
But at the same time, it's just like, there are levels to it. You do want to make sure that the people that you are seeking to help, you know, because we can get on the internet and say, oh, these people need help, or our community needs help. But when it's time to really show up for our community, to show up
Mhm.
for the people that we say that we care about, we're not. And showing up doesn't mean physically. It's not always physically. It means that if I have a service, right? I have a
Mhm.
product and I know it's going to help my people.
Mhm.
Why would I say you can't have access to it because you're in a certain tax bracket? And I know that's a very like bold statement, because that's the that's the that's the world we live in. You got coaches, business.
Controversial. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, business
Mhm.
influencers who say no, like, why are you always have to have that high ticket, you know, thing that
Yeah.
it's on in your business. And maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. They could be right. But at the same time, it's just like that elitist mindset that we have in our community, where again, that's tied to that capitalism, right? Because someone is always going to be at the bottom who can't get that. They're not going to be able to afford that food, right? And before we end, I do want to touch real briefly on the fact, because Sunday I am going to go live about a particular business that I believe is just straight up toxic to the community. But I want to say this. I want to say that a lot of these places, like these plant-based communities, or even healthy whatever they tag on a name so that you'll come to it, right? So
Mhm.
vegan is very big right now. That's why you have all these impossible burgers, beyond burgers, fake meats, um everything you can think of. You have, like you said before, everything you can think of that was attached to meat is now you can find it. You can veganize it, right?
Right.
The issue is is that a person's lack of knowledge on what is actually healthy means that I'm going to go to this place that serves a Beyond Burger and I'm going to eat it and I think I'm going to be healthier. But in actuality, they're not going to be any healthier, right? Because you're still giving them poison, right? And I do think that there are a lot of a lot of people who own restaurants and stuff like that who may not even know. I mean, and I tell people who I work with their, with nutrition, I tell them all the time, even the vegan, whether it's one of the healthiest places you've ever been, you always have to be careful when someone else is preparing your food. And what does that go to? That goes to going outside of yourself. And like the last conversation that I had on here, I talked about that being taking like ownership of yourself. And we all participate in this system some kind of way, right? Because I remember there was an elder who said, we all coon at some levels. And so the thing is, though, how much can you exist outside of that system, right? But there are people who say, hey, they grow their own food, right? So they're able to feed their family in a certain way. But there are too many people who are still dependent on somebody even preparing the most basic thing, so that's what we have to get to, taking ownership for our own bodies.
That's
and
a good
saying,
point.
you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
taking real good ownership of how we are participating in this system and not even learn. So we go to the doctor and we say, hey, I'm feeling a certain kind of way. Can you tell me what's wrong with me? And they can't tell you what's wrong with you because it's a practice. They're practicing on you. So that's why they go through so many tests, because they don't know. But if you empower yourself, you can take the steps and say, if you do have to go to the doctor, this is what is going on with me. This is what I know to be true, right? And then they can say, oh, okay, this is what I think you should take, right? I talk about my story all the time with my son. To this day, they haven't told me what's wrong with my son, but I was able to study. And then here's the spiritual piece, right? The knowledge that I was given to learn what was wrong with my son was given to me when I was pregnant with him. So it was always like the ancestors was preparing me way before I even knew that I was going to need that information. So when people try to dismiss the spiritual piece, I can't go with that, because it's things that I can't even explain. Like I not told you, because if I tell you, you'll rock with me. But there are some people who say, you crazy, like you a little cold, right? You know what I'm saying? So we do have to be able to connect those different pieces. And I want us to, I hope my dear sister Hanifa will join me again.
Of course. Of course.
I want you to comment. I do want you to comment on that and just, like wrap us up when it comes to just wrap us up, sis.
So I'm gonna probably refer to, I think, Dr. Light. He made a comment where he was saying that it's really just taking it one day at a time, and one thing at a time. It is not a race. It is not a race. We all have a vision of how we want our lives to be, right? And there are many, many barriers in this world, within this system that we are existing, within this reality that we are existing in. There are many, many barriers. And so it's going to take you deciding, what am I first going to focus on? It could be something like my health. If your health isn't where it's supposed to be, let's just start there, right?
Yeah.
Before you even get to health, because we was talking about slowing down, before you even get to the health piece, as far as taking care of your body, slowing down can simply mean that you are deliberate with taking at least 30 minutes to an hour away for yourself, to just be with yourself. It could be you grabbing a book. Something I try to do every day is read. I have about 3 different books I'm reading at the same time right now. Okay. So I try to at least read for 30 minutes. That's my time for myself. Then the next 30 minutes, I sit and I kind of reflect on what I just read. So I say that to say that it's just small steps that later on becomes like that contribute to big changes. You know what I'm saying? So I think we overwhelm ourselves, which is what you were saying, where somebody's like, I can't slow down. Yes, you can. That is your invasive, overwhelming thoughts that are kind of like bombarding to where you can't even think or see clearly. You know what I mean? So for me, it's just taking like baby steps. Tackle one thing at a time. Tackle one thing at a time. Not just tackle, conquer one thing at a time. It takes time. Some things take study. Some things take practice. So it's just taking one thing at a time, tackling it, and then before you move on to something else. We have got to get out of the race mentality. And I'm gonna end by saying this. I always use this example. If I bring my child to a race, and when my child get there and they're one of the competitors, the other competitors have already run laps around the track 10 times. When I get there with my child, I will look and I will say, oh, the race has already begun. So this now is no longer a competition for my child. So I can either put my child in the race and say, try to catch up. Run 10 times faster than them to catch up.
Yeah.
Or I can see the harm that would do to my child and say, let's go. And decide not to run the race. And I say that to explain that a lot of our people, we have to unplug from this system of trying to catch up to the people who have oppressed our people for centuries, who have had a bigger head start than us. We have got to relinquish that idea and let it go, because I think it is contributing to our health issues. Okay, our burnout, right? And this is the thing that you said earlier, like the it's this idea that, okay, it's just that we just need to work a little harder and then we'll get there. I find that once we begin to unplug from those ideas, a whole lot of other things begin to fall in place. And I can guarantee you, Maat, if we are to unplug, if you start there and say, this is not a race, this is not a competition, not when the people have already run 10 laps around the track. It is not a competition. So therefore, I am just going to choose not to participate. You know what's going to come out of that? You will begin to find time to slow down. Because grind culture is rooted in working 10 times harder. You understand what I'm saying? So a big part of it is to let it go. And then we will find that we start to, oh, wow, okay, I can, engage in this. Oh my, I never even saw that before, because now all of a sudden your mind is thinking differently because you have rejected the idea of playing catch up. You see what I'm saying? So if I close with anything else, is find something, one thing that you need to tackle. You're going to have many. Maybe you should prioritize them that you need to tackle and work on that thing, at least for the next 6 months, before trying to move on to something else. It could be your health. It could be cleaning up your diet, like Maat was talking about. Is meditation, is just sitting with yourself, is reading some spiritual books, whatever that is. Commit to it at least 6 months before you move on to something else. There is no race to win. It doesn't exist. There is no race to win. There is no race to win. There is no need to work 10 times harder. That's an illusion. Even if you work 10 times harder, by the time you run, you lap 10 times, they would have lapped 10 more times.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So relinquish that idea, rid yourself of that illusion, divorce yourself from that way of thinking, and it will free up a lot of your energy and a lot of your time. And that's pretty much that's all I gotta say.
Yeah. And it's that was really good advice, because when I go back and I think about the changes that were happening, right? Those changes came from, maybe it wasn't necessarily, maybe I didn't start with my diet. I might have started with meditation, right?
Yeah.
Might have started with a fast, like, and once you start those things, they connect to other things, because we don't live, it's one. And that's why I always say, understand science in your bodies, because we are out here acting like we operate in a system that is not connected, or in a world that's not, everything is not connected. Look at your own bodies and how fine tuned and how they connect with all the different organ systems, and how your cells and the things that your cell, once we could understand science, we can understand ourselves a lot more, and how everything is connected. So right now, you engaging in this conversation, right? It's connecting to some part of you, but it's not just your mind, right? It's your spirit. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many things that we do, and we have to be able, because just like I told you with the cycle, like when we the things that happen within a cycle, right? You see something that is going to bother you. You watch it anyway, right? And then it begins, and what happens? And you start eating things that are not right for your body, because now you're frustrated and you're emotional. And so now you go through this never, well, I'm not going to say it's never ending, but it's a cycle that you go through, when all you have to do is say, I'm going to stop absorbing this particular content. We've been there, right? Like, I'm not going to absorb this content anymore, right? I'm going to absorb things that are going to feed my mind. So once you just like my sister Hanifa said, right? Just do one thing, because that one thing can change the trajectory of everything else, because you are not, like, you're just not one thing. You're not just your mind, right? You're not just your body. You're not just physical. You're so, like, everything about you is interconnected, and it's not interconnected just like me and my sister. We are reflections of one another, right? So she is me and I am her, right? Like, we're all the people in the chat. We are each other. That's why you're here, right? We are all connected. And you came to, like, most of you I haven't met in person, but we look at each other as a community, as a family, right? So I really appreciate my sister joining me. Yes, I was able to bring her out of the darkness. No, but I do, like, I love talking to my sister. We get on the phone, we gonna be on there for hours. This is light work.
This is light work, yes. We definitely have to do it again. I always enjoy conversations with you. And like you said, this is light work. We be diving deep, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yes. And I appreciate everyone for coming in, joining the conversation. I will be going live Sunday. It shouldn't be too long of a conversation. I'm going to be ending the wellness series, and we'll be going into another series starting after next week. And I definitely want to have you on for a conversation, because we're going to be talking about some things dealing. Yeah, I'll let y'all know what the conversations are going to be about. But if you want to, there's so, like I said before, there's so many ways to support the channel. Like, subscribe, leave some comments, share the content. You can support the channel monetarily. All my links are in the description. You can become a member of the channel as well. All those different kind of things. But as always, I'll see you soon. Thank y'all for joining. Peace, everyone. See you next time.
All righty.